Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and it's time for our second edition of Breaking News of this Saturday, the 6th day of July, 2024. And we do have, as always, a number of stories we need to bring to you. For example, a reformist has now become Iran's new president, but as usual, nothing will really change. Egypt says it will mediate the discussion between Hamas and Israel to come to a solution with respect to the fighting that's going on in Gaza. We will see. Biden said he's fine losing to Trump as long as he did his goodest. And the knives continue to come out from elected Democrats who want to see Biden step down, as actually another one has come out today, number 5, and demands that he quit. And when I do this last story, I will try very hard not to laugh. All right, headline number 1. Iranian reformist Masoud Pezeshkian, I guess that's how you pronounce it, wins the presidential election. The victor promises to ease hardline laws. He supports Khamenei and he wants good ties with all countries except, you guessed it, Israel. The turnout in the election amounted to 49.8%, with 600,000 of the ballots spoiled. Reformist candidate Masoud Pezeshkian won Iran's runoff presidential election. It was announced early Saturday, besting hardliner Saeed Jalili by promising to reach out to the West and ease enforcement on the country's mandatory headscarf law after years of sanctions and protests squeezing the Islamic Republic. Pezeshkian promised no radical changes to Iran's Shiite theocracy, of course not, or he'd lose his head, in his campaign, and has long held that Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as the final arbiter of all matters of state and country, which is how it's been since 1979 when the Ayatollah Khomeini took over. He will also not lead any changes in Iran's contentious relations with Israel, saying after he voted on Friday that should he win, he will try to have friendly relations with all countries except Israel. And then Ayatollah Khamenei said, I recommend Pezeshkian follow the path of Raisi. The supreme leader of Iran then came out, Khamenei, and he addressed the victory of the reformist candidate, saying, I advise the elected president of Iran to look towards the future and continue the path of Raisi. I recommend that he utilize the full potential of the country, especially the revolutionary youth, for the sake of progress. Now, though he's called a reformist candidate, nothing will really change in Iran. Nothing ever really does, because the Ayatollahs are the one who rules the roost here. Now, so Iran remains on the path that will lead them to follow Russia when it eventually invades Israel. We talk about this on our website, Educating Our World, in our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end, signs 9 through 11. We're in the last days. There'll be a number of countries that will invade Israel, which include Iran, Russia, and Turkey. Sign number 10, there's a number of nations that sit it out, include Egypt and the Gulf states. The Gulf states actually protest. And number 11, the United States is conspicuous by its absence, and that's why we conclude there's no U.S. as a superpower in the world at that particular time. All right, let's go now to Israel and Hamas. Egypt tonight said they're going to host Israeli-U.S. delegations to hammer out U.S. ceasefire obstacles. Egypt will host delegations from Israel and the United States, and that's interesting. What's the United States doing with this? Israel and the United States to address issues still obstructing a ceasefire deal and the release of the hostages. The Egyptian channel Al Qahira News reported late on Saturday, citing a senior source. According to the source, Egypt is holding talks with Hamas to advance the deal. Reports are that the deal consists of a prolonged ceasefire while some hostages are exchanged. The details are still not agreed upon. Now, will a deal come about? It's hard to see unless one side really compromises. Let's hope it won't be Israel. And let's hope the U.S. doesn't pressure Israel to the place that they feel they have to compromise on certain things. Lord help the United States if they force Israel to compromise on their desire to get rid of Hamas as the leaders in Gaza, or do not completely destroy the main element of Hamas's military might. We'll see what happens, but this headline here is bothersome, that Egypt is going to talk to Israeli and U.S. delegations to hammer out the details. This is Israel's fight. Anyway, we'll keep you abreast of that. Headline number 3. All right. Joe Biden suggests he's fine losing to Trump as long as, quote, I give it my all and do my goodest job, and do the goodest job I know that I could do. That's a direct quote. President Joe Biden suggests that he could accept a loss to Donald Trump so long as he did his goodest during his interview with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos on Friday evening. During the interview, Stephanopoulos told Biden that he has never seen a president who had a 36% approval rating get reelected. Stephanopoulos pressed Biden about how he would feel if he stayed in the race and Trump ended up being elected. And that's when he made that profound statement. As long as he did the goodest job he knows, he could accept that fact. If English is not your first language and you're wondering about this and you thought, "No, I've never heard anybody talk about goodest," and that's not really a word in the English language. It's good, better, best, the best, we would say, not goodest. Some children say it when they're about 2 or 3 sometimes, when they're just learning to talk, but they're corrected right away. Evidently, Joe Biden didn't get the memo. Anyway, so that's his line. Well, anyway, even though he's trying to do his goodest, headline number 4, Representative Angie Craig demands Joe Biden drop out, the first lawmaker to defect after the ABC interview. Now, this is what's interesting. Remember, the ABC interview was supposed to keep people all in line? Well, she's defecting. She's a Democrat from Minnesota. She officially asked Biden to step aside early Saturday morning, say, as an elected leader, I feel a responsibility to be honest about what I believe, even when it's hard to hear. Angie Craig is the 5th member of Congress to demand Biden step aside since his disastrous June 27th debate. And she won't be the last, which leads us to our next story. Headline number 5, in denial, Democrats are livid that Biden is digging in. This is from the Politico. One Democrat put it this way, let someone else do this. President Joe Biden's first televised interview since last week's debate meltdown did little to stop the bleeding. Many were, namely members of Congress, were shocked by the president's blatant denial about his standing in the race and his repeated dismissal of his party's widespread concerns. It's an approach some Democrats describe as dangerous. In other words, if you watch the interview, you got it that he didn't get it, that his standing in the race he's not leading, and that his party has widespread desire to get rid of him. He didn't see that either. He didn't believe either of those things. All right, they question also, one of the questions the debate raised, of course, is about his fitness for the next 4 years. Said David Axelrod, the longtime Democratic operative who helped lead Barack Obama's presidential campaigns. And Axelrod said, and he simply doesn't acknowledge that concern, that, there's a question about his fitness. He is also in denial of where he is in this race. A House Democrat granted anonymity to speak candidly said, denial of the problem is not a solution or a path forward to convincing our constituents that he has the capacity or the vision for 4 more years. And another Democrat operative who has advised the White House called the interview a stay of execution, but added the president's acceptance of losing to Trump as long as he tries his best. Well, he said, he'll try my goodest. Will make his hand significantly worse with every Democratic office holder who does not want to lose their seat. In other words, what usually happens if a president gets wiped out, if there's a fairly good landslide against him, he's going to bring down the other members of his party, because when people really vote the ticket, oftentimes they just vote straight, either Republican or Democrat, and they call it coattails. And his coattails will go the opposite way, will bring people down. All right. So while his withdrawal may seem to be inevitable, and it not necessarily will be, every day that delays, it makes it tougher for Democrats to unify because they're not sure who their candidate will be. And the election's in a mere 4 months. Now, this has not stopped the rest of the world from acting crazy, as this last story illustrates. I'm not making this up, and I'm going to try and do this with a straight face because this is a true story. Headline number 6. The world's first carbon tax on livestock will cost farmers $100 per cow. Dairy farmers in Denmark face having to pay an annual tax of 672 krona, or $96 per cow, for the planet heating emissions they generate. The country's coalition government agreed this week to introduce the world's first carbon emissions tax on agriculture. It will mean new levies on livestock starting in 2030. Denmark is a major dairy and pork exporter, and agriculture is the country's biggest source of emissions. The coalition agreement, which also entails about 40 billion krona, or 3.7 billion in measures such as reforestation and establishing wetlands, is aimed at helping the country meet its climate goals, and that's why they're going to do this. With today's agreement, we're investing billions in the biggest transformation of the Danish landscape in recent times, Foreign Minister Lars Loke Rasmussen said in a statement on Tuesday. At the same time, we will be the first country in the world with a carbon tax on agriculture. The Danish dairy industry broadly welcomed the agreement. Did I read that right? Yes, the Danish dairy industry broadly welcomed the agreement and its goals, but it has angered some farmers. You'd think so, huh? $100 per cow. The move comes just months after farmers held protests across Europe, blocking roads with tractors and pelting European Parliament with eggs over a long list of complaints, including gripes about environmental regulation and excessive red tape. The global food system is a huge contributor to the climate crisis, producing around a third of the greenhouse gas emissions, the article says. Livestock farming has a particularly big impact, accounting for around 12% of global emissions in 2015. I guess they haven't updated it since then, according to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. A share of this pollution comes from methane, a potent planet-warming gas produced by cows and some other animals through their burps and manure. I'm trying my best not to laugh, yet it seems the entire world is going crazy. This is not surprising considering how the Bible describes everything at the time of the end. So we've $100 per cow in Denmark starting in 2030 to keep their emissions from destroying the planet. You really can't make this stuff up, can you? All right, I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. We'll keep an eye on the two main stories, Israel and Hamas. Will there be a ceasefire? Will there be an agreement? Will the U.S. try to pressure Israel into doing something it shouldn't do? And of course, Joe Biden, the saga continues, the soap opera continues. Now you got 5 members of Congress saying he's got to leave, and a lot more want to say it. They're just afraid to come out publicly. What's going to happen in the coming days? Stay tuned. The good news is we know what's going to happen at the time of the end because the Bible tells us. And again, as always, please check out our material on our website, Educating Our World, where we have 65 books on various biblical subjects. And we hope you're taking advantage of the ones besides the ones on Bible prophecy. But we do have 12 books on Bible prophecy, including our book, 25 Signs We're Near the End, which explains in great detail all the things that are going to happen according to Scripture at the time of the end, the main event. So please take advantage of it. And everything is free. We don't charge ever for anything. That's our ministry. All right, I'm Don Stewart again. Thanks for watching. Until next time, may the Lord, as always, richly, richly bless.